Hello everyone, this is Wayne Kurtz from Race Twitch. I hope everyone's ready for the weekend. It is Friday again, thank goodness. It is race time. As I think I just checked, there were over 200 races this weekend, Friday through Saturday on Race Twitch. So for those of you racing, enjoy it out there. One I would like to highlight and then also talk about one concept we all struggle with, I think, to some degree and continue to learn, which is tapering. But to start with, one big race that I think a lot of you, especially from the ultra running community, know of in the United States is the Vermont 100 miler, which is this weekend. I've run it several times. It's a phenomenal race, very well run. And the thing that I think is most enjoyable about it, it's a long-term 100 miler. And they know what they're doing there very well, and great aid stations. And it's a good one, I think, for a lot of you who have not attempted a 100 miler to try on the first shot. Not saying that it's easy. I think sometimes Vermont gets the misnomer of being an easy course. And the one thing that I would advise all of you who have not run it that are running this weekend, and those who are thinking about it, is the amount of ups and downs. The thing about Vermont is it's either you're running vertically or you're running down the hill. There's not a whole lot of flat sections. Even though it's not tough single track and a lot of heavy rock, there are some sections where there are single track and rooty areas. But the thing that I think most people always complain about it and say why it was more difficult than they thought was the amount of ups and downs. So make sure you've trained, hopefully those of you running have already trained those two areas and focused on them, because you can make up significant amounts of time in that race if you're good on the ups and downs. And the other key component is it is a race that is normally very humid. So for those of you who are coming from drier climates, be ready, and especially on the East Coast, it's been extremely humid. Drink excessively to make sure that you've got your calories, and make sure that you watch your stomach, because that's one of the things I've seen for years. Many people dropping out of that race have stomach problems. So enjoy it out there. It's a super race. I wish everyone well that is doing it, for sure. But one other thing I'd like to talk about, I get lots of comments and questions about, what's the best way to taper? I think for all of us, we each have a different approach to tapering. But, I hear the stories of individuals that have bad races, and the next thing we know is, I ask them the question, well, how many races have you done? Well, I've done 3 races in the last 6 weeks, and they're all 50-mile running races or whatever. I think as you evaluate, your race season and you look at key races, normally most of us can look at 2 or 3 major races to peak for. And those are the ones you need to taper for. If you have other supplemental races, is it going to hurt you if you're going in a little tired? Yeah, it might a little bit, but it does allow you and force you to learn to race on being tired, which if it's a long distance endurance race, as we all know, the race always comes down to the last 4 or 5 hours. If you're running well or biking well or, whatever the event might be, those are the key components. So when you're evaluating your tapering, it's not always the same. You've got to drop your mileage dramatically. I've always felt personally, a couple tips I use. One is if the race is long, meaning 24 hours or longer, and it's not an A race or key race for me, I don't taper dramatically. I'll still do my hill repeats that week. I might shorten them, but I will continue to train through the race. As if it's a shorter race, for instance, if it's an Ironman, half Ironman, or maybe a half marathon as an example, and it's your key race and you want to go all out, yeah, then it makes sense to taper, but you still need to include some pickups in your workouts to make sure you raise your heart rate, and it keeps your legs from getting flat. And also, just don't sit around. I've known many people for years who trained for that key marathon, and all week it's sit down, keep the legs up, and you get flat. So I don't think there's a set way to do it, and I think we all continue to learn. But key points, make sure if it's not a key race, taper it down a little bit, but not dramatically. Make sure your diet's in line. The week of the race, always make sure you've got enough green vegetables going in, and that component of it is helpful. Balancing your proteins, not overeating, and that's the time to sleep, a few days beforehand. But, the nervous energy always makes it a little tough. But if you follow the same pattern in eating the right things, doing the same types of training depending upon that race, you can see some improvement. And, I'm a big believer in sometimes doing the opposite. And these massive tapers of doing, I read the books and dropping down significant amounts of mileage and, kind of remaining, even for my big races, and they're longer in nature, I will still train going into the race, but, I'll reduce the mileage back. But, always keep those in mind. Play with the intensity, distances, and more importantly, the fuel intake, what your food items are and things of that nature. So I wish I had a perfect answer like so many books and what I hear, this is the perfect way to taper. But to each his own. You go by feel and experiment with it. And if it's not a key race, try something different. Try something different in your diet that last week. Increase the amount of water you're drinking. And still maybe do that hill repeat. Who knows if you do it midweek, is it going to have that much of an impact? You won't know if you don't try it. And a lot of times it does keep the mind and body fresh more than anything else, because the last week is always mental. If you haven't trained by that point, who knows how the race will go. But even if you're undertrained, a lot of times many people always say if you're undertrained a little bit, it's always better than being way overtrained. So keep that in mind as well. Enjoy it this weekend. Have fun. For those of you who are out there racing it, I will be actually doing a 6-hour running race this weekend here in Pittsburgh. So it looks fun. It's a fun run. All in preparation is for my big races. And for those of you who are doing the fun runs as well, enjoy it. And have a great weekend. Thanks.